Hi everyone, David here. Welcome to Chapter 1. The segment is going to be on efficiency and the benefits of specialization and trade. Okay, so here we go. When we talk about efficiency in economics, we often refer to productive efficiency and allocative efficiency. I mean, overall efficiency, most people have a pretty good idea of what it means, but let's get specific here. With productive efficiency, it basically means getting the most output for the least cost. So it's production of an output at the lowest possible average cost. We're getting the biggest bang for your buck, so to speak. So if there's two ways of producing something, and one way means you have to use or hire one less person or one less unit of labor, then that one would be more productively efficient because it would have a lower average cost of outputs. Allocative efficiency, on the other hand, is slightly different. It's producing the outputs in the economy that best satisfies consumers' demands. So it produces, what people want. We could probably very cheaply make black and white old box-size TVs, but who wants one, right? So even though the cost might be lower at one point anyway, nobody wants one, so it's not allocatively efficient. My kid used to come home after Halloween, where kids would go out from house to house and ask for candy. Then him and his buddies would all sit in the basement and dump their candy bag out on the floor. And he knew, because of the $8,000 worth of braces in his mouth, the dental work that I had to pay for, that he wasn't allowed to get the really hard, chewy candy that could destroy his braces, but he was allowed to get, the other junk food like potato chips and popcorn and stuff like that. So when they dumped it out on the floor, what did they proceed to do? And I hope some of you are thinking of, well, they trade amongst themselves, and that makes them better off. So what I may like may not be what my neighbor likes. So it's important to look at this allocative efficiency as well as productive efficiency in economics. So we said that the kids, when they dump their candy out on the ground, they might immediately begin to trade. My kid would trade away his hard, sticky candy that could ruin his dental work, and maybe try and get soft popcorn or potato chips, or even licorice might be good from other kids, which he was allowed to eat. An important thing that has to be considered is that voluntary trade benefits both parties. So all the kids would be better off if it's voluntary trade of the candies between them. If my son was to get aggressive with other kids and force them into trading with him, that doesn't benefit everybody equally, of course. And the more trade, the greater the benefits there can be. So if there was 5 kids or 10 kids or 15 kids, it's not too hard to see that the more kids would have more candy, and you could trade away more of the stuff you didn't want to get more of the stuff you wanted. And we can extend this, and it applies to individuals as well as to countries. So now we're going to start talking about countries in trade, and how if there's many countries involved in the trade, then maybe it's beneficial to all countries if you specialize in what you do best and can export that particular product. Now, I want to take a side note here and say that a lot of you are well aware that there is a big downside to global trade, such as sweatshops or using child labor and things like that. We don't specifically address this here. We're just looking at the overall benefit from increased production, which you'll see. So let's look at an example, a simple example of 2 cities. And you can see that they're called Athens and Sparta. And I'm just going to grab the pen here, Athens and Sparta. And Athens, right here, if they use all their land, labor, and capital, which we referred to in the last chapter, or earlier in the section on this chapter, and they apply all their resources to producing bread, they can make 20 bread. Or if they apply all their resources to making plows, they can make 10 plows. Notice or. It's a very important word there. They can't do both. Just like Sparta here, if they use all their land, labor, of capital, now they've got a different strengths, right? So they can only produce 10 bread, or if they use all their land, labor, capital, they could make 20 plows. so they're better at making plows. Notice the word or, they can't do both. They have to pick one or the other. With no trade, each city produces half of each item. So Athens, on the one hand, can make 10 bread with half its resources. And get this, they can also make 5 plows because they need bread and plows. Sparta, doing the same thing, can take half its resources and make 5 bread. And at the same time, they can make 10 plows because they need bread and plows. Notice the word and instead of the word or above. So the total output now we can see is 15 bread and 15 plows. So in this case, both cities together are able to produce 15 bread and 15 plows together. There's no trade, so they're not trading plows and bread between them. So let's take a look at the big bad economist. Notice no trade here. In the sky looks down and says, hey, guys, let me show you something. So we'll clear this and take a look. And the only thing changed is the bottom graph here. So we've got Athens. They're best at producing bread. Notice if we go up top, Athens is best at producing bread. So what they'll do is focus all their energy and produce bread. That means they can't produce any plows because they're using all their resources to produce bread. Sparta, similarly, comes along and says, look, we're better at making plows. If you look up top, all their resources can produce 10 bread or 20 plows. So they're going to make 20 plows, but that leaves nobody left over to produce bread. So they're producing 0 bread. So in this case, what magically happens when they specialize in what they do best is they can produce 20 bread and 20 plows between them. Before, if you recall, they could only produce 15 bread. So their gains from specialization are 5 more bread and 5 more plows. Now, it doesn't always have to work out to be equal like that. So the 5 more bread and the 5 more plows just shows that if they specialize, they can make more stuff. We still haven't determined how they're going to split that stuff up between them, and that's something you do later on in the next macroeconomic course. But this just helps explain the benefits associated with specialization and trade. That ends our session segment on this part.